There gotta be a better way than this.
Very nice. This is how to paint, how to properly paint something. Anything really, as long as we're talking about spray painting and you're not painting on wood, but they all pretty much have the same principles. With this right here, I'm actually painting the hood off of an old garden tractor that I recently acquired. It's a 1965 Allis-Chalmers Big 10. Anyways, I call it the Warlock. So the first step of anything, of course, you've got to prep the surface, but this is about the painting. Now I like to use acid etching primer and sandable primer, all in one. The sandable or fill primer is extremely important because lots of times you'll have little dimples of any sort in your metal, right? These dimples you need to fill up with paint, right? If they're really big, of course you want Bondo, but in this situation, let's say you fill in these dimples with paint, and the idea is that the dimple is a little crater, little teeny tiny crater. Whenever you put your primer in there, you paint it, it's going to go into the crater, but it's also going to go on top of the crater. So once the primer dries, you sand it off, and you're sanding off the top of the material, right? So that hopefully you sand the primer down, but the crater's here and it's still filled with paint. And so the idea is to over and over again build up primer so that it fills in all of those little dimples. Then we move to our base coat, clear coat setup. So first you spray on your base coat. Now one of the big keys that people don't realize, and the reason they get runs in their paint so often, is because they put it on too heavy. The first coat should be just a dusting, a light dusting. It barely covers up the paint that's underneath. It doesn't even. You see it coming through like crazy. Wait 10 or 15 minutes, allow it to get nice and tacky, and then put on your next coat. Do this throughout your painting with every type of paint, primer, clear coat, base coat, whatever. Allow it to get tacky and then put on your second coat. Patience is the key. Once it dries, again, you want to sand it because it's still going to have little dimples here and there. But with base coat, you're going to want to start your wet sanding procedure. You'll use a 2,000 to 3,000 grit sandpaper, wet sand it, again trying to get out the dimples. You might want to do this process over again, paint it again with the base coat, and then once that's done, you clean it off and you clear coat it. Now your clear coat is where if you're going to spend any money, spend it on your clear coat. It's extremely important. So if you're doing the rattle can setup, don't go for the $4 clear coat. Go for that $7 or $8 clear coat. It makes a huge difference. The clear coat is extremely important that it runs together, right? Because those dimples, you don't have much of a chance to get rid of them anymore, right? So if you get a good clear coat that really melds together, right? It makes the buffing process and everything afterwards a whole lot easier. So once you do that, again, light dusting it first, let it get tacky, then paint over it another light dusting. The more patience you have with this process, the fewer runs you're going to get and the better overall paint job you're going to have. Once it's nice and dry, and I mean really nice and dry, like the next day or 2 days later, then we can actually start to wet sand our clear coat. All right? We wet sand it again with about 2,000 to 3,000 grit, and the idea here is if you wet sand it, right, you're going to notice it gets really dull, really dull, and then you're going to have little spots that are still shiny. Those little spots that are still shiny are dimples. Again, and now again, it goes all back to what kind of quality paint job you want, but the better quality paint job, you will redo this same process over and over again until there are no dimples at all, period. And this is how you get a really kick-ass paint job. At the end, you finally go through and you buff it. Now the buffing will bring back that shine of the clear coat that you thought you just screwed up by wet sanding. So, and now all this with a grain of sand. If you're painting a little lawnmower, you might not want to go through all this stuff. But then again, you might. So, good luck. And tune in next time. We'll see if I can teach you how to flip an egg.